Welcome to Christian Statesman. I'm your host, Zach Wagner, and this is episode 23. Why are trouble spots run by Democrats? I've lived in 15 different states throughout my lifetime. These include coastal states such as New York and New Jersey, Midwestern states such as Ohio and Wisconsin, southern states such as Alabama and Florida, and western states such as Colorado and Arizona. America is a very diverse place with numerous subcultures and a wide variety of outlooks. Social, political, religious, and economic frameworks vary from person to person and region to region. The guy who has lived in the Bronx for most of his life will see things quite a bit differently than the guy who has rarely left the old homestead in Lincoln, Nebraska. But one thing that seems to be consistent in many of these areas is that our largest metro areas, particularly on the coasts, seem to be dominated by Democrat leadership. Places like New York, Chicago, Seattle, and Los Angeles have not had conservative leadership in decades, if ever, in the measurable past. If you get into more traditional states like Ohio, you will see liberal leadership in some of the cities, such as Cincinnati and Cleveland, with very conservative mindsets in the more suburban and rural precincts. It is curious that the most tumultuous areas, with the most crime, the most violence, and the most general dissatisfaction and unrest, all seem to be areas that have labored under long-standing leftist Democrat policies. If we look around and see cities that are having the most trouble or are plagued with leadership that does not hesitate to oppress their citizenry under the guise of coronavirus protection, it reads like a laundry list of Democrat strongholds. Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle, Portland, New York, Boston, Detroit, Baltimore, Atlanta, Chicago, Minneapolis, Milwaukee, the list goes on and on. Each of these areas, afflicted by poverty, crime, unsustainable fiscal policy, and now laboring under the most draconian lockdown policies under overbearing mayors and governors, have exactly one factor in common. They are all run by a monoparty bloc of Democrats, and have been for many years. The definition of insanity is to continue to do something over and over while expecting different results. We can clearly see, politically speaking, that all of these places are losing their minds. And we see further that predominant leaders in these areas are not just unwise in their application of policy, they are universally hypocritical in thinking it applies to the uninformed masses and not to them. Thus, we can see California's Governor, Gavin Newsom, eating out with his family at an exclusive establishment, while the mom-and-pop eatery around the corner is required to shut their doors. Thus, he keeps state-run gyms and casinos open while privately owned establishments will be ticketed or arrested for attempting to conduct business. Nancy Pelosi can visit her hairdresser when she needs a refreshing, but do not let Joe or Jane Citizen attempt such an indiscretion. Gretchen Whitmer's husband likes to go boating, while regular Michigan folks are told to stay home. This begs the natural question: how do people like this remain in power in these places for so long? With evidence of policy failure literally lining the streets of places like San Francisco, how do the same old faces keep getting reelected? Are the citizens just that blind and complacent, or is there something deeper in play? It is a valid question, and it is a social political research project worthy of attention. And as governors like Newsom or Whitmer ignore their own laws, their own courts, and demands of citizenry, the question lingers: how much more will residents of these areas put up with before they have had enough? There are already stirrings in many of these aforementioned cities and states. As in our last episode, referring to sleeping giants and brinksmanship, are these Democrats so used to unchallenged power that they believe they can do or say anything without consequence? It will be interesting to see how lockdowns, bizarre postures towards law enforcement, random definitions of essential and non-essential, economically unsound spending, and strange voting behaviors are addressed in some of these places. One thing we can be sure of: if there is trouble brewing and things are not going well in your particular zip code, you might want to take a look at who is calling the shots. Chances are it is a tidal wave of Democrats.